The vaccine's a paediatric version of what's been given to those over the age of 12. COVID response Minister Chris Hipkins says it's 1/3 of the adult dose. He says it's been thoroughly tested and trialled. Mr Hipkins says once MedSafe makes a decision, recommendations are then made on the use of the vaccine and its rollout. He says supplies of the lower dose vaccine have been secured from Pfizer.
The iwi leading checkpoints between Tamaki Makaurau and Te Tai Tokiro says the plan for screening Auckland travellers is unworkable. The government is adamant unvaccinated people will be able to travel north if they return a negative COVID test 72 hours before travelling. But Te Tai Tokiro iwi chairs and the Auckland, Waitangi and Counties Manukau and Northland DHB chief executives have written to the government opposing the plan. Anthony Thompson of Te Rununga o Ngāti Whātua says there's been little time for border teams to adjust.
Being 2 weeks out, we're really anxious about, one, planning from now till the 15th of December, and then what the world or what Northland is going to look like from the 15th of December through to January.
COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins is adamant the rules won't change. The chair of the Waitangi National Trust says the decision to cancel Waitangi Day events at the treaty grounds is based on health advice. Pita Tipene says COVID-19 means it would be practically impossible to safely proceed with events, which normally attract crowds of up to 40,000. He says the region's low vaccination rates and the concerns of Te Tai Tokiro iwi all played a part in the decision.
With 30 to 40,000 people potentially converging on Waitangi at any one time, we looked at the modelling from the local Northland DHB, and we looked at the graphs and the worst case scenarios. As unfortunate and as frustrating as it may be, that was the decision we came to.
Pita Tipene says the Trust is working to develop a virtual Waitangi Day experience. The countdown is on to get both vaccine doses in time for Christmas. Northern DHBs say tomorrow marks the final day for people to ensure they're fully vaccinated before the Christmas shutdown. Spokesperson Matt Hannant says it's vital to get jabbed ahead of the move to the traffic light system and the border reopening. There are several pop-up events being held throughout the Auckland area tomorrow. 2.8 million My Vaccine passes have so far been issued. 95% of people who've applied have now received the pass. The new traffic light framework starts on Friday. COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins says a lot of work is going on to make sure everyone has their pass in time.
We've got an extra 400 people working in the processing team now that have been brought on stream to help with that. For about 90% of people, the fastest way to get their vaccine pass is the online portal. But you can also get your vaccine pass at one of the 400 vaccinating pharmacies that are out there throughout the country.
And the Auckland Mayor's proposal to add a climate levy on homeowners is being criticised as another cost for hard-hit Aucklanders. Phil Goff wants to raise over $1 billion, mostly for more public transport. If approved, the new council rate will cost an average of $57 a year per household. ACT MP Simon Court says Aucklanders are hurting.
Inflation is up 4.9%. Aucklanders pay an additional fuel tax. The emissions trading schemes putting up the price of petrol, $9, $10 a tank, and that's before you mention the cost of housing and rents in our larger city. And now the Mayor wants to hit Aucklanders in the wallet even harder.
Phil Goff's proposal still has to be passed by the council. It's 5:04 and to sport now. The Black Caps coach Gary Stead has defended the performance of New Zealand spinners in the side's hard-fought draw against India in Kanpur. Ajaz Patel, Will Somerville and all-rounder Rachin Ravindra all played key roles with the bat, but were less impressive with the ball when compared to India's Ravi Ashwin, Ravindra Jadeja and Axar Patel. The New Zealand spinners took just 3 wickets in the match, while the Indian trio took 17. But Stead believes it's unfair to compare the two spin bowling units.
The Indian spinners probably bowl 5 to 10k quicker on average than us, and that's not always an easy thing to adjust immediately. It's the same way sometimes when they come to play in New Zealand, then they're not quite as effective. Also remember that both Ajaz and Will came off, that was their first game of cricket since last season.
Entries for the next America's Cup have opened today, although where and when it will be held is yet to be decided. Cup defender Team New Zealand says it's already received several entries for the 2024 event, but won't confirm who they are. Swiss syndicate Alinghi is reportedly one of those lining up after an 11-year absence. The venue for the next America's Cup is due to be announced in March. And the Los Angeles Lakers basketball star LeBron James is isolating and adhering to the NBA's COVID-19 health and safety rules and is out of action indefinitely. It's unclear whether James has tested positive for the virus or is simply in close contact to someone who has. And that's the news.
A new leader.
All I can say is my faith is personal. It gives me purpose. It gives me something bigger than myself. And importantly, it's completely separate from the state.
A new variant.
If you look at the way it's spread and how quickly it's spread, it's inevitable that it will show up in our MIQ facilities.
And a new life.
Oh my gosh, this thing is actually happening. If that comes back saying that we are residents of New Zealand, it will be like we've won $50 million.
Keeping it fresh. Morning Report weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and isolated showers, clearing later tomorrow. Waikato to Whanganui, including Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country. Long fine spells, scattered afternoon and evening showers, some heavy. Thunderstorms possible today. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, often cloudy with showers, becoming fine in Wairarapa tomorrow. Manawatu to Wellington, mainly fine. Nelson, Buller and Westland, mainly fine, with isolated afternoon and evening showers about the ranges, possibly heavy. Cloud increasing tomorrow evening and patchy rain developing. Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland. Cloudy morning and night, scattered afternoon and evening showers inland, some heavy. Isolated thunderstorms for Southland, Central Otago and inland Clutha tomorrow, possibly reaching the south coast. For Fiordland, mainly fine. Isolated showers inland this afternoon and evening, often cloudy tomorrow with occasional showers. And for the Chatham Islands, fine. RNZ National at 7 minutes past 5. I'll have more news headlines at 5:30.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Coming up, the reactivation package to put the sizzle back into Auckland's summer and how to divvy up 100,000 vouchers between more than 1.5 million people and why the hospitality industry says it's been left out in the cold. But let's begin tonight in Northland, where Auckland bookings are being cancelled and Waitangi commemorations at the treaty grounds have been scrapped. From December 15, unvaccinated people can travel north if they return a negative COVID test within 72 hours prior. But Te Tai Tukaro iwi chairs and leaders of the Auckland, Waitemata and Counties Manukau and Northland DHBs have written to the Prime Minister and Health Minister pleading for them to backtrack. And as Sam Ollie reports, the welcome mat for visitors outside the region looks like it's well and truly being put away for summer.
The Advent calendar has barely opened and already Christmas travel plans for some Aucklanders heading to Northland have been cancelled. This whangare family had plans to head further north with their Auckland whānau over summer.
We were supposed to be going on a holiday, but we got at this batch and we just got sent a letter saying sorry, because my in-laws are from Auckland. They're like, because you're from Auckland, we're not going to let you in. And you know, it is really sad, but totally understandable. But it's also like, don't you need money?
And the stakes got even higher today when the Waitangi National Trust canned commemoration plans at the treaty grounds, where crowds of 40,000 gather annually. Chair Peter Tipene says the decision was based on dire modelling from the DHB and people needed answers.
People book marquees, they book stages, they book a whole host of equipment, and businesses want certainty. So we can't leave it in the lead up to Christmas, New Year's, because people take holidays and we don't want people to be taken by surprise.
The cancellations follow the release of a second letter to the government this week, outlining, quote, grave concerns about tourists travelling from outside the region into Northland. Te Runanga o Nai Tākoto co-chair Wallace Rivers was one of more than 20 signatories.
Our communities are fearful that COVID will spread from Auckland into our community and elsewhere throughout other communities throughout Aotearoa, not just ours.
The letter followed another from a smaller Waitangi group earlier this week, claiming they would block off areas between Opua, Waitangi and Russell from visitors this summer. People on the streets of Paihia today are wary of an influx of visitors, but double-vaxxed are welcome.
I reckon it's all good. If they're scared, they should have got vaccinated. It's the only way it's going to get anywhere is everybody get vaccinated.
A little bit worried. Same time, we need the business. Things have been very difficult. I'm 60, 70, maybe 80% down from 2 years ago. So, yeah, desperately need the trade. The whole town needs the trade.
Further south in Christchurch and Palmerston North, most people think Northland should be open for business.
It would be fine, like as long as people stick to their rules around wearing masks and vaccination and stuff like that. And like I think if you can travel to other parts of the country, there's no reason you can't travel there as well.
No, I reckon it'll just be worse in the long run for that. It's just better if just play it safe and just wait.
As soon as Auckland opens up, it's going to be literally everywhere, so we might as well just accept it. And if you want to risk it, risk it. If you don't, then don't. Yeah.
Yes, I think we should. Because I'm one that's been held up and going for my holiday out there and seeing my family, which I haven't seen. Because all I have done is work all my life for 34 years. So I would like to go back out north and see a place where I haven't been since I was 17.
And no change of heart from COVID-19 response Minister Chris Hipkins today. Instead, he put the onus back on Northlanders to keep themselves safe.
To all those in Northland who are expressing concern or nervousness or anxiety, the best thing they can do is go out there and find people who haven't been vaccinated and have conversations with them about the importance of vaccination.
Chris Hipkins says there is more vaccine misinformation in Te Tai Tokerau than anywhere else in the country. The numbers speak for themselves. 15% of eligible people are still yet to have a single dose. But exactly how the checks on visitors to the north will work remains unclear. Te Runanga o Ngāti Whātua Chief Operations Officer Anthony Thompson says there are still no firm plans in place.
Being 2 weeks out, we're really anxious about planning from now till the 15th of December, and then what the world or what Northland is going to look like from the 15th of December through to January.
And as the joint letter to the government says, there is time for people to get their second jab by December 15 if the message is unambiguous. But that time is quickly running out.
It is 12 minutes past 5. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. A support package to put the sizzle back into Auckland's summer has left the hospitality industry feeling a little burnt. The government's subsidising 100,000 freebies and discount vouchers for council attractions and facilities like pools, museums and the zoo to get people back into the super city after the lengthy COVID lockdown. But it's rejected the idea of restaurant or hospitality vouchers for an industry that's been hit hard by restrictions. Also included in the package, a $10 million contestable fund for small, free community or neighbourhood events for the vaccinated only. Reporter Louise Denuth and camera operator Marika Habazi filed this report.
A golden ticket to an Auckland attraction. After months in lockdown, the government's hoping it can bring Tāmaki Makaurau back to life with a $37.5 million injection. $12 million will go to vouchers aimed at encouraging people to get out and experience the city.
100,000 vouchers are on offer for families and they can apply from the 15th of December. That'll provide them with free or discounted access to Auckland Council-owned facilities like here at Auckland Zoo.
They'll count for any events or visits from January till April. But how will they determine what 100,000 households will get a voucher out of 1.6 million people? CEO of Auckland Unlimited, Nick Hill, says they can't give them to everyone.
Some people probably need the benefit more than others, so there will be a degree to which we do target that by postcode to probably those areas that probably struggle to afford to come to things like the zoo.
The vouchers will be released in batches so they can monitor who's actually using them. Not all Aucklanders are keen on the idea.
Definitely, if it gets us into places to go out and about, because we've just been stuck at home all the time.
At the moment, we are fine to stay in our bubble.
I don't really know, to be honest. No.
Why not?
Because if I wanted to go those places myself, I'd go myself. I guess only the big chains kind of open up during level 3. So yeah, I guess it would have been better to help more local communities and that kind of stuff.
So will it be enough to keep the city afloat when wage subsidies and resurgence payments run out? Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern is adamant it is.
We also announced just on Monday an additional transition payment to support businesses as we move into the traffic light system for those who have had a decreased revenue. So that has been the primary financial support. This is an acknowledgement that as we come into a new way of doing things, we do need to provide additional ways that we can have consumers come back in and enjoy the city again. So this is by no means the primary support that's being provided by us.
As for where hospitality fits in all of this, well, they don't. The Prime Minister says that was based on overseas examples.
We looked at a specific voucher system for hospitality based on what we'd seen overseas, and it did produce mixed results. Often they were used to try and encourage people to come into weekdays, and in some cases that led to a decline of patrons over weekends. They're also quite difficult to operate in, as I say, mixed results. So our goal has been actually to provide directly businesses, and that's what we've done through that transition payment.
Nick Hill's backing the decision to steer clear of vouchers for hospitality, confident events will help with that.
Hospitality benefits when people come out, and if they come into the centre of the city or they go to the local town centre, then often they'll spend money on other things.
That's left owner of Bodrum restaurant Rugby Gill frustrated.
Definitely we've been left out. I don't know what was the reason behind that. Would have been nice for us to be included.
They're facing an uncertain summer as Auckland prepares to open up.
Well, we were planning we were doing a yearly plan for the whole year, but now we're just doing planning for 3 months, Let's see what happens in 3 months and then we see where we go.
Manager at Good Brothers Joel Bosman is echoing his concern.
We would have liked to have got more people in, so the vouchers, if they would have increased traffic, that would have been fantastic.
He's hopeful events could drive traffic to them, but they've got no guarantee of numbers until the vouchers kick in January.
We're not certain, because we're thinking if everything's opening back up, people might be disappearing out of Auckland, but we're prepping for a busy Christmas because we're thinking it's everyone's chance to get out, and that's what we're hoping for, yeah.
As part of the reactivation package, another $12 million will go towards food banks to meet the rising demand over Christmas, and $10 million for businesses or community organisations to organise events that are free for the public.
Well, joining me now is the Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage, Carmel Sepuloni. Good evening, Minister.
Good evening, Lisa.
So why just vouchers for council-owned venues?
Well, it was about reactivating Tamaki Makaurau, and I heard the piece before I came on about the concerns by the hospitality sector, and I have to say that the flow-on effects will go to them. If people feel comfortable going out, if there are incentives for them to be active in their local communities and to get out and about in Auckland, then there will be flow-on benefits to the hospitality sector.
Why not provide vouchers so that they go and people can choose where they want to spend them, or they can directly go and spend in the hospitality area that as well? They've really felt the brunt of this long lockdown.
Oh, certainly. I understand. I guess as the Prime Minister has said, the dine-out vouchers and the schemes that we've seen overseas have had very mixed results. And so we've opted to go with this particular suite of measures and have been supported by Auckland Council with regards to doing it. Always administering this type of scheme is going to be complicated, so it's great to have Auckland Unlimited on board with supporting us to roll this out.
Minister, that's not entirely correct about overseas options for dining vouchers. I'm looking at a report to the UK Parliament. They had Eat Out, Help Out. And in the report, it says the scheme contributed to a boost in the economic output of food and beverage services. Food and beverage services output grew by almost 80%. In contrast, other sectors of the economy saw a slower or no recovery in the same period. So it has worked in some places. Did you talk to hospitality about what they might want from this?
Certainly the advice that we've received has said that the results have been mixed. I'm sure there's been pockets of success, Lisa, but we have taken the advice and we've looked at the opportunities that exist. we Aucklanders, in some instances, are going to be reluctant to go out and about. And so this is about reactivating for the purpose of economic benefits, social benefits and cultural benefits as well.
So in terms of economic benefit, a lot of the vouchers are going to be targeted to lower income areas. Is that going to incentivise them to come and spend money at cafes, pubs, restaurants, shops?
It will be. I know that there will be a focus to ensure that there's kind of equity of receipt of these vouchers. But it is about ensuring that Aucklanders in general have the opportunity to get out and about. And so many of them will, Lisa, they will be encouraged to go and spend money in other places as well. But also keeping in mind that it is also about the local activation program that will be in place, encouraging communities and business associations and businesses to set up activation programs that fit their communities so we can encourage people to get out and experience summer in Auckland.
So how does it work exactly? Are you reimbursing the council for the entire discount or freebie? You give them the money back?
So the funding is allocated to council. Auckland Unlimited are running it. A small percentage or proportion of that is going to the administration of it. I think that's around about 1 million. And the rest of it will be with regards to the vouchers, paying for the vouchers and the discounts that will be available to Aucklanders.
Yeah, because again, here's the thing. If you gave vouchers out and said that people could spend them wherever they want, the money would go round more. You spend them at a business, business spends it on suppliers, on extra staff. Here, it's one government handing it to local government.
I will say we've looked at a range of options, Lisa, and actually the administration side of things is the thing that we had to take into consideration as well. This was the least complicated, the easiest to get running within the time period that we wanted it to run, and the most efficient. So we're comfortable with where we've landed. So
in the press release that you put out, you say that it was put together with council and also another council-owned entity. Was there any hospitality, Heart of the City, any business association consulted during the process of coming up with what you were doing?
That was certainly the main consultation that occurred.
So no one from the business community outside council?
I wouldn't want to say no one in particular, Lisa, because I've been leading particularly the social development side of this announcement. But certainly council was the main point of contact with trying to determine what would be best for Auckland at this time.
Okay, so you've got an arts and culture event support scheme as well, which is basically insurance, right, for events from 100 people to 5,000 who may have to can their event if their district doesn't move out of red. I'm just wondering why you're doing this now, because there's been a number of events that have had to cancel, postpone and have endured costs during the lockdown, and they didn't get anything. Marathons, sports events, parties, they all lost money. So why now?
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that there was a $374 million arts recovery package, and that has been targeted in a number of ways. This is just another measure. As we've gone through this pandemic at different points, we've pivoted funding, we've looked at what's needed, we've responded to what we've been asked for. This is one of the things that we've been asked for from the sector. It was in place as of today and will provide some certainty to these people that are running events. We want them to feel confident to go ahead with planning, but we understand that there's still that nervousness because of COVID and the potential loss that could be made if for some reason it has to be cancelled because of COVID. And so
you've got this contestable, Minister, you've got this contestable fund as well, $12 million if you want to put on a free event, right? Yes. You can apply for the money if you've got 100 plus people. So you can only use it if you're in orange, right? So, and it's for Auckland. So on the 13th of December, do you anticipate that Auckland's going to be in orange because your application's open on the 15th of December?
Yeah, we're certainly, I'm not going to preempt what decisions will be made on the 13th of December, but Lisa, as you know, as we all know, that will come down to what the general landscape looks like at that time, what the vaccination rates are, what the numbers of cases are that we're seeing, and then the general capacity of the health system to be able to provide the care that's needed at that time. We'll have to wait until the 13th of December to
But
be
that
able
reboot
to
fund,
state
that
what the
reboot
decision-
fund, Minister, is of no use unless the district is in orange, correct?
Oh, look, we've got to look at the overall protection framework and make sure that we've got measures in place to be able to support, and that's certainly what we're doing.
But it's only applicable in orange because it's for events over 100. You can't have anyone over 100 in red.
Yeah, but when you look at, it's not looking at one measure, Lisa, it's looking at the range of initiatives that we have in place. And so if we look at what we've just announced today for Auckland with the local activation fund that will be available, then that will provide some support to those local arts or any other type of activation event that the community deems as being something that is suitable for them.
Really appreciate your time this evening. Thanks for joining us. That's the Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage, Carmel Sepuloni. It is 26 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora rawatu mo te whakarongo mai. Haere ake nei, the government's timeline for vaccinating under 12s. Tonight, an update on a story we brought you a few months ago. The police are now investigating self-styled justice campaigner Scott Guthrie after another inquiry found he breached numerous regulations. The Corrections Department started investigating after Checkpoint revealed Scott Guthrie had charged an inmate's family thousands of dollars for support and advice dealing with the department. Scott Guthrie had been granted specified visitor status, allowing him access to inmates in jail. But it's against the law in that role to take rewards or payments from prisoners. Mr Guthrie also allegedly gave the impression he was working for charity. Here's what he had to say when Checkpoint asked him about invoices showing money from a prisoner's family had been paid into his personal accounts.
Well, that would have to be totally incorrect. You need to send me a copy of that because I would refute that. Absolutely.
Scott, are you saying that you have never sent an invoice to any family requesting funds for support and advice in dealing with corrections?
Totally, I'm saying that. What I'm saying is the family that you're pertaining to is...
It's come from your email address.
Lisa, the initial invoice was, yes, $10,000, and it was rejigged because...
So you did send them an invoice for $10,000 then?
I think we discussed it. Look.
No, Scott, this is really important. This is a vulnerable family. I have in front of me here an invoice, which is from you. It has your name, your address, it has your bank account, your cell phone contacts, and your email address on it. You billed this family for $10,000, didn't you?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, sorry. When I'm looking at my invoices now, you are correct, but that invoice was withdrawn and a new one was drawn up. Correct?
Okay, so did the money go that they paid into the Transforming Justice Trust Fund? Or did it go into your private account, Scott?
No, because the board actually used it. We used that as travel costs and disbursements.
I'm looking at the bank account here. I can read it out if you want me to. But is that your bank account, Scott?
Lisa, I have got minutes from the board.
Cooperative Bank?
I have got minutes from the board that we used those funds simply for travel disbursements.
Can you please clarify for me, Scott, whose bank account did this money go into? Was it your private bank account?
Correct.
So you sent them an invoice, including Transforming Justice information at the base of the invoice, yet the money was going into your bank account, even though, well, it kind of gives the distinct impression that you were operating for a charitable trust. Do you see a problem with that?
I can see what you're pertaining to, Lisa, but yeah.
And that was Scott Guthrie. Now, Corrections has formally revoked Scott Guthrie's specified visitor status. It has also referred the matter to police after its investigation reached the following conclusion. Mr Guthrie received payment for providing services to prisoners. Do note the plural there, prisoners. Mr Guthrie was aware he could not receive payment of any type from anybody for services delivered as a specified visitor. And he had signed an application which specifically asked if he had received any benefit or gift from or on behalf of prisoners, and he had ticked the no response box. Corrections also says the proper checks were done in granting Mr Guthrie his visitor status, but its investigation has found there's an opportunity to enhance current processes. Police have confirmed to Checkpoint they're conducting further inquiries. COVID vaccines will be rolled out to children aged between 5 to 11 by the end of January, with vaccine supplies ready and waiting. The government's already secured the paediatric doses, with final purchase and use pending MedSafe approval. Our political reporter Annika Smith has more.
More than 20 months into the pandemic, a vaccine for children is just around the corner. Plans to roll Pfizer out to 5 to 11-year-olds are now well advanced. Here's COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins.
The paediatric version is an adapted version that's designed to ensure that it's effective for our tamariki. It's about 1/3 of the adult dose, and it has been thoroughly tested and trialled.
The government has already secured supplies for the paediatric vaccine, but any final purchase or use of it is entirely dependent on MedSafe approval. If MedSafe gives it the green light, it will still have to go to a technical advisory group before final sign-off from Cabinet. Primary and intermediate students go back to school between the 31st of January and 8th of February next year. Epidemiologist Michael Baker says vaccinating 5 to 11-year-olds should clamp down on the virus's transmission even further.
At the moment, New Zealand has quite a high portion of its population under the age of 12. It's a relatively youthful population, so it's about 14% of the population. If we can vaccinate the majority of them, that actually greatly increases our overall population coverage of the vaccine.
Some parents RNZ has spoken to are anxious about sending their kids back to school before they're fully immunised. Chris Hipkins says all children will be expected back at school come start of term 1.
Unless there's a medical reason to do that. And so for those families where they've got children who have those medical reasons to keep them home, then of course they can do that.
The Director General of Health, Dr Ashley Bloomfield, says most of the children caught up in the Delta outbreak, under 12s accounting for roughly 20% of all cases, caught the virus at home.
The vast majority of those cases are from household transmission. They're not from transmission in ECE or school settings. And so the risk to children around getting infected is actually inside households, and the best way to protect them, of course, is for parents and those who are eligible in those households to be vaccinated.
As the weather warms up around the country, the government has already got its eye on winter next year. Chris Hipkins says boosters and vaccines for children should be rolled out by then.
That will put us in a very, very strong position heading into the New Zealand winter. You know, it's funny to think about that now when we're only just sort of feeling like we're heading into summer, but we do need to think that far ahead.
MedSafe is expected to receive advice on the paediatric vaccine, which it will then have to consider in a few weeks' time.
Ho mai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback. Nō reira ānei nā kaupapa mō te hōtaka nei. How do you feel about 5 to 11-year-olds being vaccinated? Let us know your thoughts. Also, Auckland's reactivation plan, you know, the money to put the sizzle back into Auckland summer. Is it targeting the right people and the right places? And what about Waitangi? No face-to-face at Waitangi this year, cancelled due to COVID concerns. Pātui mai, text me 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Kia ora e te iwi e hariaki nei I a Checkpoint. What Auckland businesses think of the government's Saving Summer package. Hello and welcome to the 21st century. We're going to dial up the Chatham Islands on a mobile. The system went live this morning, and the pick and mix of rugby rules on offer for next year. We'd love to hear from you. Send us your thoughts on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. Right now, though, it is time for the headlines. Ko iwi anō tēnei.
The rollout of a Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine for children aged between 5 and 11 is expected to start before the end of January. The vaccine is a paediatric version of what is being given to those over the age of 12, and the rollout is conditional on it being approved by MedSafe. The government isn't budging on travel into Te Tai Tokerau, despite grave concerns from DHBs and iwi leaders who have asked that unvaccinated people be blocked from entering the region. The COVID response minister is adamant that unvaccinated people will be able to travel north if they return a negative COVID test 72 hours before travelling. But the iwi leading checkpoints between Tāmaki Makaurau and Te Tai Tokerau says the plan for screening Auckland travellers is unworkable. The Māori Crown Relations Minister says the government is committed to working with the Waitangi National Trust on virtual Waitangi Day celebrations next year, now that events at the treaty grounds are cancelled. The Trust says COVID-19 means it would be practically impossible to safely proceed with events, which normally attract crowds of up to 40,000. The Auckland Mayor's proposal to add a climate levy on homeowners is being criticised as another cost for hard-hit Aucklanders. Phil Goff wants to raise over $1 billion, mostly for more public transport. But ACT MP Simon Court says Aucklanders are already financially hurting. Christchurch Airport is setting aside 400 hectares to create Kōwhai Park, a renewable energy precinct with a solar farm that can power 30,000 homes. Fiji's borders reopened today to vaccinated travellers after being shut since March last year due to COVID-19. And Jeffrey Epstein's longtime pilot has testified in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell that he flew Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump and others in a plane nicknamed the Lolita Express. Ms Maxwell is accused of recruiting and grooming underage girls for Epstein to abuse. Those are the news headlines. We'll have more news and weather at 6.
Kia ora rā e ho, no mai hoki mai, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Ko taku hoa inai nei, ko Nona Peltier, he's here to talk business news. Nona, the NZX will get at least one new listing by the end of the year. Who's that?
Yes, we just heard from a company called Winton Lands. They're a property developer that has a number of residential types of investment, including retirement offerings. And they want to be one of the bigger retirement village operators in New Zealand, and they're looking to raise $350 million in an initial public offering of shares, and with a debut on the market of the New Zealand Stock Exchange as well as the Australian one on December 17th. And so it's an exciting sort of end of the year. We haven't had that many listings this year, so it'll be quite good to see another one added to the market, no doubt.
And women need more recognition and support to succeed, according to a recent survey by the ANZ Bank. What are the findings of that?
Well, the ANZ Bank did a survey of 1,500 men and women, and the idea was to sort of look at how their investment in sports sponsorship was going. But what they found was something a little bit wider than just sport, and that was that confidence, fear of failure, and being judged are the main factors holding back women from success. It had really very little to do with their natural abilities. In other words, you could be a very talented, capable person, but if you didn't get the right kind of encouragement and you felt you were being judged, that was going to hold you back from succeeding, not putting up your hand to go forward and so forth. So mentoring became a very important issue. So they did this report called Watch Women Win. And the chief executive of the ANZ Bank in New Zealand, Antonia Watson, is really going to do more with this than just leave it as a study that is quite interesting, but what can we do with it? She says she's going to champion women's success stories and make sure that people know and recognize some of these women who really do need that boost to keep going.
And Nona, what numbers have you got for us from the market?
Interesting. We had an increase of just 5 points today on the NZX to 12,724. And that's in line with what we've seen in the region. The Asian stocks rose from a one-year low after really difficult yesterday. And we've seen some pretty rough goes recently with volatility in the market as the new coronavirus variant unsettles investors. So 5-point gain is pretty good. The New Zealand dollar also ticked up a little bit, 68.5 US cents and 95.7 Australian, 51.5 pence.
Thanks, Nona. Ka kite. Nona Peltier there with business news. Nationals reset means a reshuffle as Chris Luxon seeks to make his mark on the opposition party. The new leader now has some big decisions ahead of him as his opposition MPs head home after anointing him their saviour. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
Day one in the worst job in politics. Christopher Luxon launching straight into the relentless round of morning media.
We're delighted to be joined by the new national leader.
Chris Luxon's with us. Good morning. How are you feeling?
Congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you very much.
The Luxon induction in full swing. The new opposition leader put through his paces, parrying perils and pitfalls, hit up on housing.
Why do you own 7 houses?
Would you want to see house prices fall if you were Prime Minister?
Well, I wouldn't want to see house prices fall dramatically.
Cornered on Christianity.
People, when they hear about a Pentecostal or an evangelical...
But who said I was Pentecostal or evangelical?
Precisely. Can you clear it up? Are you either of those things?
Yeah, so I wouldn't describe myself in those terms. I just describe myself as having a faith and a Christian faith, and that's it.
And asked about abortion.
I'm a pro-life person.
Can you just say you won't touch abortion laws while you're Prime Minister?
Absolutely.
An assured opening performance under his belt, Mr Luxon now turns his mind to the caucus, the promised reset, ensuring a reshuffle, and a series of important positions to be divvied out among MPs.
We're going to make announcements over the coming days. That's the work of today and the next few days, is just actually going through and looking at the talents of each individual and saying who's best suited to what position.
Simon Bridges is known to be keen on the high-profile finance portfolio and is likely to land it as quid pro quo for bowing out of the leadership contest. The bigger question for Mr Luxon is Judith Collins, what to do with the deposed former leader. The dilemma underlined by those in her own Papakura electorate.
I think she should leave. She's not a very nice person.
As part of a party, I don't think she's a good team player.
I think some of the comments that she's made have been a bit inappropriate and below the belt.
I like her, but that was not her best hours.
But honestly, I don't think she should stay in politics.
Ms Collins has other ideas, promising to stay on and fight the next election. Mr Luxon says she does have a role to play, but given recent events, he'll be wary of being seen to reward bad behaviour and alert to the potential signals being sent to his caucus.
I think Judith's an extraordinarily brave woman, and I think she's in very good space.
Oh, well, look, any of those discussions are caucus decisions.
It's not for me to discuss and advise different positions within the caucus.
We're a team of 33 and we're all got a part to play.
The caucus is united. We're focused on the job at hand.
Mr Luxon had another key task today, a ring round the other party leaders to say hello. Among them, the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern.
I'll focus on doing my job, and I wish whomever is in the role the best in doing theirs.
Whomever is in the role, Mr Luxon makes the 5th opposition leader to face off against Ms Ardern. He's made a solid start, but then so did some of his predecessors.
It looked like a hard sell, land stuck next to a noisy neighbour, an international airport with high voltage cables directly overhead. But Christchurch Airport has found a solution, devoting 400 hectares to create a renewable energy park. More than half will be dedicated to solar energy, generating 150 megawatts, enough to power 30,000 homes or a fifth of the city's residential electricity use. Today, the airport unveiled its plans with hopes it will help more businesses kick carbon to the curb. Tess Brunton has more.
The future of renewable energy is looking bright in Canterbury as Christchurch Airport detailed its plans for the country's largest solar farm. It's part of Ko-Fi Park, a 400-hectare renewable energy precinct. The airport's chief executive, Malcolm Johns, says the pandemic got them thinking about their future.
Now, when you're selling real estate that is right next to an international airport and directly underneath high voltage cables is not generally very attractive. But if you're in the renewable energy game, that's the perfect place to have it. If it happens to have large amounts of water underneath it, then you start to get into not only renewable energy but also green fuels in the future.
Ko-Fi Park won't just be a site for solar energy.
The concept of this is to create an energy precinct that can service not only renewable energy generation and storage, but also support green data centres, vertical horticulture and the production of green fuels for land and air transport over the next 30 years.
He says their business is designed to hold land long term.
So it allows generators to come in and add to their production in 5, 10, 15 hectare lots without having to buy large tracts of land and put that money up front. So our role in this is to provide an enabling pathway over 30 years so that we can help a low capital entry to renewable energy generation for those that are interested in taking that up.
He says they will have options to double its footprint over time, depending on demand. Australian Renewable Energy Fund Solar Bay is committing $100 million to the development of Phase 1, the solar farm. Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalzell says it's blue sky thinking.
I had it described to me that when this array is completed, that as we fly in, we're going to see the equivalent of 262 football fields, rugby fields below us. And I think that's going to be an inspiring sight, not just for the people of Christchurch, but actually people who fly in internationally as well.
She says the airport is leading the charge towards a more renewable future.
This is really advanced thinking. It's thinking about our future in a way that is sustainable, and it's taking full advantage of the site that we have available here at the International Airport.
The demand for renewable energy is forecast to increase by more than 60% by 2050 as Aotearoa switches to green technology. That means aviation turning to electric and hydrogen planes and drivers to electric vehicles. Minister for Energy Megan Woods says it's exciting to see this kind of innovation.
New Zealand is going to need to double its generation of electricity, renewable electricity, in the coming decades. And that's even with the closure of Tiwai Point in 2024, which accounts for 13 to 14% of New Zealand's electricity usage. So projects like this that are looking at new and innovative and alternative ways of generating are incredibly important.
Minister for Climate Change James Shaw expects it will only be a few years until the first passenger electric planes land at Christchurch Airport.
And then the question is, where is that electricity coming from that's going to get them on their next flight? So to be able to generate that on-site, 100% renewable electricity, to be able to supply this new generation of aircraft that are part of the decarbonisation story of aviation is incredibly exciting, and it will be world-leading.
Kowhai Park is expected to start producing solar energy within 5 years.
It's 14 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He muriaki e na pita pita kōrero after the news at 6 is the government's $37 million summer package enough to save Auckland's CBD. To the US now, and another school shooting. A teenager is accused of shooting dead 3 students and injuring 8 others at a high school in Michigan. Police in the state say the 15-year-old isn't cooperating on the advice of his parents. CNN's Josh Campbell has more.
Tonight, 3 students shot and killed at Oxford High School just north of Detroit.
Around 12:51 today, we received a 911 call of an active shooter at the high school. Deputies immediately responded, and we received over 100 911 calls into our dispatch.
A 16-year-old boy, a 14-year-old girl, and 17-year-old girl, all killed.
I'm shocked. It's devastating.
The suspect, a 15-year-old sophomore at the high school, firing off what is believed to be around 15 to 20 shots over 5 minutes. At least 8 others were wounded and taken to area hospitals. The majority are in stable condition, with 2 undergoing surgery.
We also have 8 others that were shot in various stages at 3 different hospitals.
The president weighing in from Minnesota.
My heart goes out to the families enduring the unimaginable grief of losing a loved one.
According to authorities, the shooting suspect did not resist arrest, and they believe he acted alone.
This is every parent's worst nightmare.
No motive has been found, and the shooting suspect's parents tonight have invoked his right not to speak to the police.
World Rugby is shaking up the rules next year. Countries will be able to pick and choose from 10 different rule variations to introduce at the grassroots level of the game. The tweaks are being made in a bid to make rugby more accessible and improve player welfare. Felicity Reid reports.
From January, all rugby playing countries will be able to do what New Zealand provincial rugby unions have been trialling since 2020. Community teams will be able to field sides of between 10 and 15 players. Matches can be reduced to 40 minutes and played in halves, quarters or thirds. Scrums can be uncontested, pitches can be smaller, tackles lower, and games played with a smaller ball. New Zealand Rugby's Participation Development Manager Mike Hester says today's sign-off by World Rugby legitimises what NZR, England and Wales adopted last season for club and school games. He says trialling the rule variations last year, particularly the reduced team sizes, saved community rugby in some parts of the country.
Whilst it was never introduced with the anticipation of COVID coming along, it proved to be a real game changer last year in terms of actually ensuring that rugby was able to return following lockdowns, because we didn't necessarily get all our players back. There were other commitments or priorities or things that they needed to focus on, so teams weren't necessarily able to assemble full squads. And so Game On played quite a significant part last year in ensuring that community rugby was actually able to return to reasonably good levels. And some grades around the country were actually only able to operate because Game On was available to them in terms of sort of law flexibility.
Alongside several World Rugby rules, there will be New Zealand Rugby-initiated rule changes that will come into effect at grounds around the country next season. But Hester says he's cautious of not changing the essence of rugby too much. There are 5 changes at secondary school level and 9 rule changes being trialled at senior club level. Reducing tackle heights to below the sternum and improving the flow of the game by introducing changes around scrum constraints and resets are the major focuses. All changes are directed at increasing player safety and making the game more appealing.
For every change you make, there's always a reaction, so we do need to be a bit measured about how many changes we do contemplate and look to introduce. Player safety is obviously always a priority for us around any change that we do make, but secondly, it's also ensuring that the identities of the game are not compromised. We anticipate that this will be a number of years of work. This isn't something that will be easily resolved in a year. We've done a little bit of work this year. We're looking to do more work next year, but we actually think this is contributing to the broader sort of global discussion around how do we continue to keep the game relevant and viable.
Hester says data and player feedback will influence changes beyond the 2022 season.
Hello from the outside. No, it's not Adele calling, it's the Chatham Islands on their mobiles even. 4G wireless broadband, mobile voice data and text services, a new satellite link, satellite dish and 5 cell sites have been installed around the main island and the system went live today. We love a challenge here at Checkpoint. So right now, our lovely technician Alex is going to dial up the Chathams Mayor on her mobile dog and bone. We want to see if the system works. Can you start dialing Alex, please? And let's see if we can get through on the new mobile system. No pressure. It's ringing at the very least. That's a start. Is it ringing at the other end, though? We're trying to ring the Chathams Mayor, Monique Kroon, on their very new mobile service system. Switched on today in the Chatham Islands. And she knows this call is coming about now. So, oh no. We've been felled at the first hurdle. All right, let's try her on the other line and see if we can get through to Monique on a landline, right? So this system, more than $20 million from various government funds have gone into this project. And believe it or not, before today, they didn't have a mobile phone service on the Chathams. And now their schools, Tumarai, are covered by this mobile service and also the airport. So we want to see what kind of difference it is going to make on the Chathams. So we're calling her on the landline now. Have we got her? Okay, she's coming my way any second, apparently. Are you there, Monique? Hi, Monique.
Yes, I'm speaking, yeah.
Oh, hi, Monique. It's Lisa here from
Hello.
Checkpoint at RNZ. Can you hear me? Monique, can you hear me? She's on the Are you on the mobile, Monique?
Yeah.
Oh.
But if you want to call me back on
Yeah, don't put your number to air, Monique. We will call you back on the landline. Clearly a bit of a fail there with the new mobile system. We'll see if we can get it back on the landline. And while they do that, in the meantime, Let's go to the US again. An American-born entertainer and civil rights activist has become the first black woman to be remembered in the resting place of France's national heroes. A ceremony has recognised Josephine Baker's contribution to the performing arts and her work as a French resistance agent. The BBC's Lucy Williamson sent this report from Paris.
Josephine Baker was the star of Paris again today. Her journey to the Pantheon accompanied by recordings of her voice, as France honoured a woman who used her celebrity to campaign against racism and pass messages for the French resistance during the Second World War. As her symbolic coffin was laid in the mausoleum, President Emmanuel Macron spoke about her life.
Josephine Baker.
"You're entering our Pantheon," he said, "because you loved France and you showed the way. Born American, at heart, there's no one more French than you." Her values shaped her family too. Josephine Baker adopted 12 children from around the world, calling them her rainbow tribe.
I have a lot of little children from the four corners of the world who live there. This represents a beautiful, beautiful ideal and dream.
Baker's symbolic coffin contains handfuls of earth from the four corners of her life: Paris, Missouri, Monaco where she's buried, and the village in France where she raised her children. It arrived at the Pantheon to her trademark song, J'ai deux amours, a love song to Paris, as the city that revered her a century ago claimed her forever as its own.
Well, apparently getting through to the Chathams is not as easy as you would imagine. So in the meantime, let's hear some of your feedback on some of the issues we've been canvassing today. So on the voucher system for Auckland, this person says funding to support food banks, which are already struggling with demand. What about cash for the poorest families to spend in local shops, cutting transport and distribution costs? Who is advising these ministers? Wellington bureaucrats who have no idea of life on Struggle Street in Auckland. That's from Janfrey. Someone else says this only supports the Auckland Council, not the creative sector. A cultural voucher is a nice idea, this listener says, but not all cultural facilities in Auckland are run by the council. Many are not. What about independent theatres, cinemas, music venues and galleries who won't get anything? And on vaccines for kids, so we heard today at the 1 o'clock update that the government's basically secured a supply of the Pfizer dose for younger children. And this listener says, regarding the vaccination of 5 to 11-year-olds, as long as it's approved, I cannot wait to make it safe for tamariki. I will be glad to be able to have my child protected. Well, apparently we have the Mayor of the Chatham Islands on the line, Monique Kroon. Hi, Monique. Are you there?
Oh, yeah, kia ora. Monique speaking, yes.
Are you on the landline, Monique?
Yes, I am.
Well, hey, we were hoping to welcome you to the 21st century, but apparently we're not quite there yet. So tell us, how is that mobile service going for you right now?
Well, until now, absolutely fantastic. So this is the first time I've had a bit of a glitch, and but other than that, it's been going amazing. I've been receiving text messages, being able to make Teams calls in my truck in the middle of nowhere. So it's so far it's pretty amazing.
So, Monique, just lay it out for us. What did you have before today in terms of your ability to use your cell phone, and what about internet services?
So we've had very limited internet services, and we've had no cell phone coverage. So we've been reliant on a landline, and of course Wi-Fi. And I think one of the things when we talked about introducing cell phones, the community went, "Oh, we don't want cell phones." And then of course 2020 and COVID hit. Now communications has become so important. So this is really a moment that people have been waiting for a while now.
So in terms of the internet services, when you say you had limited services, let's put it in perspective that everyone can understand. Did you have enough juice in the system to binge watch on-demand TV or YouTube videos?
No, definitely not. We didn't. And if there was too many people using it, it would just slow down. So it would be so slow. And then if you're trying to do work or trying to send emails or download files, it was very, very frustrating.
And what's the deal with 111 calls now too? Tell me about that.
So yes, so one of the glitches, initially one of the glitches was realising that we had to interface the 111 system. So we have our on-island landline, so you can call 3050 111, but that would get you the fire brigade. So now that with the 111 system on our cell phone, it will go to a central system in Wellington, and then it will then transfer straight to the service that you're requiring, such as ambulance or fire or police.
So I know we had a bit of a glitch when we tried to ring you on the mobile then, but generally, what kind of coverage have you got from this new system? I mean, does it cover everybody, every house on the island?
Not quite. We have 5 cell sites. We have and 1 satellite dish. It covers about 67% of the land, and majority of our roads are covered, and then also a majority of our sea areas are covered. So when you're going to the south of the island, or the south of the Chathams, or south of Pitt Island, you do lose your connection.
Well, welcome to our world. You just have to sort of stand and hold your head on a funny angle, and sometimes you get through. Thank you so much, Monique, for persisting. Lovely to talk to you, and welcome to the world of cell phones. That was the Chatham Islands Mayor, Monique Croon. They got their cell phone system switched on today. 4G wireless broadband, mobile voice data. They couldn't call 111 straight through on a mobile phone before, and as she said, really limited service. You couldn't all binge watch your favourite telly program on the island before. It's all changed just overnight. After the 6 o'clock news, we'll talk to Auckland businesses about this new package.
RNZ News at 6. Ko Iwi Ashton tēnei. A leading epidemiologist says getting New Zealand's 5 to 11-year-olds vaccinated will help curb community transmission of the virus. The government's already secured supplies for the paediatric vaccine, but any final purchase or use of it is entirely dependent on MedSafe approval. It says it should be ready to roll it out by the end of January next year. Michael Baker says vaccinating 5 to 11-year-olds gives the community an important extra layer of protection.
At the moment, New Zealand has quite a high portion of its population under the age of 12. It's a relatively youthful population, so it's about 14% of the population.
Primary and intermediate students are due back at school between the 31st of January and 8th of February next year. The iwi leading checkpoints between Tāmaki Makaurau and Te Tai Tokerau says the plan for screening Auckland travellers is unworkable. The government says unvaccinated people will be able to travel north if they return a negative COVID test within 72 hours of travelling. But Te Tai Tokerau iwi chairs and the Auckland, Waitemata and Counties Manukau and Northland DHB chief executives have written to government pleading for it to backtrack. Te Runanga o Ngāti Whātua Operations Chief Anthony Thompson says there's been little time for border teams to adjust, and they're anxious about how the North will fare. The chair of the Waitangi National Trust says cancelling Waitangi Day events now is a way of providing certainty. The celebrations at and around the treaty grounds in February, which normally attract up to 40,000 people, have been cancelled. Pita Tipene says the decision followed health advice and concerns from local iwi about COVID-19. Mr Tipene says it was not taken lightly. He says events will still be held to mark the National Day, though many of them will be virtual. The COVID-19 response minister says the cancellation of Waitangi Day events reflects vaccination rates in Northland. Chris Hipkins says the decision matches the mood among Northern iwi leaders.
There is a degree of realism amongst iwi leaders about the scale of the challenge that they have ahead of them to get those vaccination rates up. There is more misinformation up there, by far, highest concentrations of misinformation in the country, if I could be as bold as to make that claim.
86% of eligible people are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. 93% have had their first dose. More than 51,000 people have had their booster shots since they became available on Monday. 5 district health boards are still to reach the 90% first dose milestone. They're Northland, Tairāwhiti, Lakes, Whanganui and West Coast. Taranaki DHB has just hit the 90% mark. Auckland Unlimited says vouchers for council facilities and events over summer will be prioritised for lower socioeconomic areas. The government's pumping $37.5 million into a reactivation package for Auckland, with 100,000 event and facilities vouchers available for households to apply for from December the 15th. Auckland Unlimited CEO Nick Hill says it'll monitor who vouchers go to, as they can't give them out to everyone.
Some people probably need the benefit more than others, so there will be a degree to which we do target that by postcode to probably those areas that probably struggle to afford to come to things like the zoo.
And in news just to hand, the government is deploying Defence Force and police personnel to Honiara in the coming days. An initial NZDF team, New Zealand Defence Force team of 15, will leave tomorrow, followed by a larger group of 50 at the weekend. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the response is short-term and to help restore peace and stability. The Mayor of Christchurch is praising plans to create a renewable energy park with a solar farm that will generate enough to power 30,000 homes. Christchurch Airport unveiled their plans for Kowhai Park at its Harewood campus this afternoon as they try to help more business to transition away from fossil fuels. The park will scale up over the next 30 years. Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalziel says it's blue sky thinking.
I had it described to me that when this array is completed, that as we fly in, we're going to see the equivalent of 262 football fields, rugby fields below us. And I think that's going to be an inspiring sight, not just for the people of Christchurch, but actually people who fly in internationally as well.
And CNN has suspended presenter Chris Cuomo over his role helping his brother Andrew Cuomo fight sexual abuse allegations while he was governor of New York. Our correspondent Ira Spitzer reports.
In a statement, CNN said that the documents released by New York Attorney General Letitia James show that Chris Cuomo had a greater level of involvement in his brother's efforts than we previously knew. Andrew Cuomo resigned as governor of New York in August after several allegations of harassing female staff members. Texts and emails revealed that Chris Cuomo was actively engaging with the governor's staff about specific details of his brother's accusers and the accusations, and even offering to draft statements for his brother. The Star anchor had already stopped covering his brother on his nightly news program once the allegations became public.
And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Michelle Hurley from Allen and Unwin. They are looking for new commercial fiction writers, and they've got prize money to prove it. Mana of the Pacific, a beautiful collection of Pacifica proverbs, is this week's Hump Prize. And happy birthday Te Araroa. Aotearoa's 3,000-kilometre-long trail is 10 years old. We talk the walk with one of its founders, Jeff Chappell. On Nights of me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and isolated showers, clearing later tomorrow. Waikato to Whanganui, including Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country. Long fine spells, scattered afternoon and evening showers, some heavy, thunderstorms possible today. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, often cloudy with showers, becoming fine in Wairarapa tomorrow. Manawatu to Wellington, mainly fine. Nelson, Buller and Westland, mainly fine, with isolated afternoon and evening showers about the ranges, possibly heavy. Cloud increasing tomorrow evening and patchy rain developing. Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy morning and night. Scattered afternoon and evening showers inland, some heavy. Isolated thunderstorms for Southland, Central Otago and inland Clutha tomorrow, possibly reaching the south coast. For the Fiordland, mainly fine, isolated showers inland this afternoon and evening. Often cloudy tomorrow with occasional showers. And for the Chatham Islands, fine. It's 7 minutes past 6.
Kia ora rā e ho, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Optimistic but not over the moon. That's how an Auckland business group feels about the new summer support package for Tamaki Makaurau. A $37 million package has been announced by the government with the aim of rebooting the super city. But will 100,000 vouchers and discounts to council facilities like the zoo actually help businesses who have been battered and bruised from months of lockdown? I'm joined by Heart of the City Chief Executive Viv Beck. Viv, do you want to start by breaking down what you reckon the good bits are and what the not so good bits are?
Oh, sure. Hello, Lisa. I mean, we've been asking, along with others, for activation funding, so we certainly see this as a step in the right direction, and I think it'll be fantastic to give people opportunities to get out and about and enjoy arts and culture and other attractions that they might not normally get to do. So there's definitely some positives here. I think on the not so positive side, we are disappointed not to see more direct support for hospitality, and the challenge that we've got certainly in the city centre is going to need more than this to activate. But I think, to give the positives, it is a step in the right direction.
Okay, so what else would you want then specifically?
Well, we would have liked to have seen some vouchers that would help our hospitality businesses. I mean, they've been completely slammed. There are other businesses that have been too. I mean, there are others that are opening on Friday for the first time, like gyms and fitness facilities and beauty therapists, etc. So there are many people that are hurting. But if I look at the scale of the impact, we've seen over $400 million impact since the start of last year on the hospitality and restaurants, an average of $880,000 per business. So they are in a very difficult situation right now. Now, the idea here is that people will come out and about and they will, there'll be incidental spending. And I totally understand that, but it's about scale. And so to give you an idea, this is going to potentially help about 350,000 people. But if I think of last December, we had 4 million people in the city centre. In November, we had 1.5. So we're really needing to see something that activates on the scale that other international cities are doing.
Okay, so let's look at London, Viv, right? So they used the Dine Out, Help Out voucher system. Our government and the Prime Minister today have repeated the fact that she thinks that those voucher systems don't really work. I mean, do you have any evidence that they do?
Well, I have heard some feedback about the UK, but I believe it helped about 50,000 businesses and it was popular with customers. If I look at Sydney, I mean, they have had multiple programs. They've had, just recently there was one, $66 million to support alfresco dining. They've had Thank God It's Friday, $50 million. They've had $500 million for a Dine and Discover program, and they've just extended it. So they've expanded from 4 to 6 vouchers. So that is a significant stimulation. I know it's a bigger city, but it's a significant investment in stimulating their economy and supporting their impacted businesses. In fact, if I recall correctly, they said if there was anything left over, they would give it to other struggling businesses. So it's been a very, very strong and scaled approach to support business and get their economy moving again. And so I'm positive about this. It's a step in the right direction, but we certainly would like to see more support for those businesses that are really struggling right now. And they haven't seen, yes.
When the council sat down and the other council entities sat down with the government and came up with the scheme, were you at the table?
Oh, we have been engaging directly, yes. Yeah, we have.
So do you feel you were sufficiently consulted about what has been delivered today?
Not the exact makeup, but we have been talking particularly to government about what we believe the city needs to be activated. So we haven't been involved in the actual makeup, no.
Okay, so the other thing that's been announced is this small event fund, right? It's $10 million, I think, from memory, contestable. So you can pitch for an event and it's supposed to bring people into the neighbourhood and CBD. Have you got anything planned? Are you going to pitch for any money?
Well, we know that events do work like that. So if we have events and activations, so we'll have to check out whether we're eligible. I haven't seen that detail yet today, but we are certainly keen, and we are already doing things that are designed to bring people back in, because that's a way to get people out and about, doing things they enjoy and supporting businesses at the same time.
We all know, if you've lived in Auckland for any amount of time, as soon as summer arrives and work wraps up for the festive season, everybody just goes away, don't they, Viv? That's it, until February.
Well, that's one of the big worries for our businesses right now, because that's the experience in the past. We know the sales in January go down about 25% automatically. What we are hoping this year, though, is that some people won't perhaps be travelling. Some will make a beeline out immediately. We're certainly hoping that the ones that don't will get out and about, and that others will be coming to see friends and family. But it is a big worry for our affected businesses because, you know, the city centre particularly is about scale, and they're seriously worried, some of our businesses, because we're in red. There's no certainty around how long we'll be in red.
So a zoo voucher doesn't help them though, does it, Viv? Not the zoo over in Western Springs or even the Domain museum up at the Domain. Potentially doesn't help you at all.
No, so that's what I'm saying. The reality is it's great for people who will be able to do those things and great for other parts of the city, and I certainly don't begrudge that. But the city centre needs more than this to address the issues we're facing.
Appreciate your time this evening. That's Heart of the City Chief Executive Viv Beck there. Auckland Mayor Phil Goff wants to chuck $1 billion at climate change, saying it's a much bigger problem than COVID. His climate change-centred budget proposal would put more buses on the road, electrify ferries and provide better walking and cycling routes. But a catch. Aucklanders will have to pay even more in rates. John Bond reports.
Phil Goff, looking to the future.
I've got grandkids. I'm thinking about the world that they will grow up in. When they ask me, Grandpa, what did you do? I want to be able to say, well, I worked with a lot of other people to make a difference and to produce changes that have helped reduce the effect of what climate change might have meant, the disaster it might have meant for your lives.
He describes climate change as an ongoing crisis and without action, a disaster. Cars and light vehicles account for over 30% of Auckland's emissions, far more than any other single category. It's one of the highest car-owning cities in the developed world. So, of the $1 billion Phil Goff wants to spend on new climate-related projects, nearly two-thirds is on more and more frequent buses. A transport commentator, Matt Lowry of Greater Auckland, says regular services are key to getting people out of cars.
There's a saying that frequency is freedom. What that means is that if you have a frequent bus nearby, you are more likely to use it. If you have an infrequent bus, a bus every half hour, for example, it's just not practical.
He says there are a lot of Aucklanders who would be willing to use public transport more if it was more frequent or reliable. And driving may get more expensive too. Phil Goff signalled the future likelihood of less parking and congestion charges. Other projects include electrifying ferries, $220 million for walking and cycling paths, and $13 million for more urban trees. Mr Goff says there's strong public support for the council taking climate action.
And 89% of the people we surveyed said yes, and we think you need to be doing more. When we asked people about what they wanted council to do a lot more of, one of the first things they nominated was public transport.
So action is supported, but where's the money coming from? An additional levy on all homeowners over and above regular rates. $57 a year for the average house, or $1.10 a week. This money and contributions from central government is ring-fenced for direct climate action.
I think people will believe the return on the $1.10 they'll be paying if they live in the medium-priced property is a great investment for their kids and for the future.
If it passed, it would be another cost for Aucklanders, with many thousands struggling financially due to COVID restrictions. Simon Court, the ACT Party's climate change spokesperson, says this proposal is a sly way for Phil Goff to raise rates above his promised 3.5%, and costs are piling up.
Inflation is up 4.9%. Aucklanders pay an additional fuel tax. The emissions trading schemes putting up the price of petrol, $9, $10 a tank, and that's before you mention the cost of housing and rents in our larger city. And now the Mayor wants to hit Aucklanders in the wallet even harder.
This proposal is just that, a proposal. It hasn't passed and will go to Auckland's elected councillors and the public before anything's finalised in 6 months' time.
It's 16 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. The new COVID variant, Omicron, has now been detected in at least 20 countries. Scientists are trying to work out how dangerous it is, but in the meantime, governments say the best defence continues to be vaccinations. New measures on masks and travel have come into force in the UK to try and slow the spread of Omicron coronavirus variant. Face coverings are again compulsory in shops and on public transport in England. These people in Birmingham have welcomed the new guidance.
I'd stopped wearing a mask. I'm double vaccinated. I've been working throughout. However, now that they've said I am back to wearing it.
We've always sort of wear them, especially on the train, because it's a closed space, so we've had to wear them. I think it's a great idea.
I guess they are the most packed places to wear them, and so if there's like a new variant and stuff, then you've just got to get on with it and wear them.
And earlier today, Greece announced people over the age of 60 who refuse to get a jab will be fined. The measure will be introduced early next year, as Mark Lowen reports.
After Austria announced compulsory COVID vaccinations from next February, Greece will introduce penalties even earlier. Its Prime Minister warning today that from the middle of January, those over the age of 60 who have not booked their first jab will be fined €100 each month until they do so. Kyriakos Mitsotakis said he had been tortured by the decision, but that he felt a heavy responsibility towards the most vulnerable, even if it might fleetingly displease them.
Δεν έχω καμία απολύτως αμφιβολία ότι με αυτή μας την πολιτική απόφαση
I've no doubt this decision will save lives. It's not a punishment. And I think it's also an act of justice for the people who are vaccinated. It's not acceptable for some people to be deprived of the health services they need because others stubbornly refuse to do the obvious.
The money will go towards the Greek health system, which is struggling with record cases and a surge in hospital admissions. With around 63% of Greeks fully vaccinated, the country is lagging behind the majority of EU members, and more than 500,000 of the over 60s haven't yet had their first dose. Greece has already brought in mandatory vaccine passports for most indoor venues, but today's announcement increases the pressure on those refusing to be jabbed.
And in Australia, states are tightening their COVID restrictions because of the new variant. Experts say it shows the need for further research into treatments for COVID-19 patients. While some drugs will continue to be effective, regardless of how the virus evolves, some variants may make some antiviral treatments useless. Here's the ABC's Bridget Fitzgerald.
While vaccination can do a lot, it's never a 100% guarantee. Professor S.S. Vasson is the COVID-19 project leader with the CSIRO.
Not everyone is vaccinated, and not everyone who starts to get vaccinated is immediately protected. And even if you are fully vaccinated, there's once in a blue moon you get a case, what we call a breakthrough, which means that somebody, in spite of being vaccinated, occasionally gets COVID.
Professor Vasson and his team are currently screening existing drugs to try and find new treatments for COVID-19, including its variants.
There might be drugs which are approved for some other disease, shown to be safe and effective generally, which might work well against COVID. So once again, we will have to now change our experimental plan so we can look at not only Delta, but also Omicron.
In fact, it's existing medicines that have been the backbone of COVID-19 treatment.
It took us about a year to get any options, and the first ones that we had are actually drugs that are 60 years old.
Professor Jennifer Martin is a physician and a clinical pharmacologist at the University of Newcastle. There's been a lot of success with this so-called repurposing of existing medicines, including steroids as anti-inflammatory treatments and statins that are used to treat cardiovascular disease.
So they were pretty much saying we can't stop the virus getting in, but what we can do is reduce the number of people that go to hospital or that need ICU or die because their organs fail.
Professor Martin says the development of antivirals is now key to try and prevent people from ending up in hospital at all. But variants pose a significant threat to the development of those drugs.
The problem is the antivirals are always very specific. Omicron, this new one that's come, the new variant, treating the host therapies will still work, but the antivirals are quite specific for a virus. And I think that's why we're quite worried. Well, I don't even think, I know we're quite worried about that because we think that maybe some of those treatments we've got that are very specific for Delta may actually not be, probably not as effective as the clinical trial data suggested they might be for the other variants.
Professor Martin says it's vital these drugs continue to be developed. However, just as with vaccines, it's likely only a handful of wealthy countries will be able to afford to treat patients with antivirals.
Again, because they're from the industry and they're still on patent, they actually cost a lot. So there's probably only a dozen or so countries that can really afford those.
Once again, creating an equity issue, leaving the world open to the risk of future variants.
Staying across the Tasman, where the big insurance companies are changing their policies around landlord insurance after a string of complaints. The move has been hailed as a win for consumers, but advocates also want legislative change. The ABC's Amy Bainbridge has more.
Lauren Arnett and her partner Luke Serakowski survived the stress of a fire in the kitchen of their rental property in the Western Victorian town of Horsham last year. Months later, they received a damage bill for $78,000 from their landlord's insurer.
Having that bill hanging over your head, it's almost like there's dread, this immediate sense of kind of like, are we going to be okay? I feel like financially we're in danger right now.
Soon after they shared their story with the ABC in September, the insurer, GIO, dropped the claim. Consumer groups had been increasingly worried about similar cases, and now their intense lobbying and media exposure have prompted wider reforms. Erin Turner from the consumer group Choice says major insurers have committed to never billing tenants for accidental damage to property.
This is a huge win for consumers, particularly people who are less likely to have a spare $78,000 in the bank. This is going to stop some of the most harmful practices we saw, where people were receiving bills. We saw them as high as $300,000.
The Insurance Council of Australia says it acknowledges the work of Choice and the community legal service West Justice. It says residential landlord insurers have been responsive to feedback, and many insurers have responded by adjusting their practices and procedures. Erin Turner wants tenants to be aware of the change.
If you're facing a large bill at the moment, if a landlord insurer is asking you to pay something, remind them of the commitment they've made. And it comes down to fairness. You shouldn't be paying for an accident. That's what insurance is for. An insurer should be paying that.
Lauren and Luke are now homeowners, but they have fresh memories of renting. Luke says their case highlights the power imbalance renters can face.
The law is insanely grey in this area and undefined, and so with the greyness, your rights aren't clear. It hopefully will stop anyone from being in the same situation as we were in the future.
West Justice Legal Director Matthew Martin says the next step is legislative change.
It would be ideal if the protection were legislated in the Insurance Contracts Act so that renters were treated as third-party beneficiaries under the landlord insurance policy, as I said, like they are in New Zealand, under the New Zealand legislation.
He says legislation would provide the ultimate protection for renters.
It's already been blamed for the demise of the recorder in schools. Now the ukulele is said to have another musical instrument in its sights. At the UK's Leeds College of Music, the 4-stringed ukulele is threatening to be more popular than the classical guitar. The BBC's Richard Hamilton has the story.
They lived a country boy named Johnny B. Good, who never ever learned to read or write so well, but he could play a ukulele just like ringing a bell. Go, go. Johnny, go, go, go.
The Ukulele Orchestra of Great Britain with their version of the Chuck Berry classic Johnny Be Good. In the UK, a study by the Exam Board of the Royal Schools of Music found that the proportion of children playing the recorder had dropped from 52% in 1997 to just 15% last year. Meanwhile, the ukulele grew from 1% to 15% in the same period. But in a letter to the Times newspaper, Graham Wade, who used to teach at Leeds College of Music, said it was another depressing example of the dumbing down of music education, calling the ukulele a rootless, limited instrument with no respectable repertoire of its own.
This is like a bluegrass thing.
Paul Rains is the general manager of the Duke of Uke shop in East London. Does he think this criticism is merited?
Those things that he's pointed out there are what we would consider to be the ukulele's strength. It doesn't have the same sort of baggage associated with it as a lot of other instruments do, which just blows the scope for what you can do with it creatively wide open, really. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing a lot of artists use them in genres sort of outside of rock, where guitar has been dominant in that kind of arena, and seeing it used in more R&B, kind of more groove-based genres.
He goes on to say that the 4-stringed instrument is much easier for children to learn than the 6-stringed guitar, and in fact it can be a stepping stone towards its more distinguished cousin. The ukulele was popularised in Britain in the 1930s by George Formby from Lancashire, but its name has a more exotic background. In 1878, Portuguese immigrants brought their own mini guitar or braguinha from Madeira to Hawaii. Legend has it that an Englishman, Edward William Purvis, who'd settled on the archipelago the following year, took up the instrument, his quick fingers earning him the nickname Jumping Flea, or ukulele in Hawaiian. Another famous resident of Hawaii was the Beatles guitarist George Harrison, who owned a retreat on Maui. He is said to have bought ukuleles in batches and given them away to the islanders. He was totally obsessed with the instrument and felt that everyone should learn to play the ukulele.
You got me in between the devil and the deep blue sea.
Well, already Brian's got in touch to say ukulele or recorder, they both burn readily. Long live the bagpipes, says Brian. Yeah, ukulele is kind of a happy instrument though, isn't it, Brian? Recorder en masse sort of sounds like a cat being strangled. On the subject of Auckland and how to get more people into the CBD, this listener says, what's Auckland Transport doing to help? Free parking, free public transport, discounts to hospo staff working in the CBD. Come on, AT, come to the party, they say. On Northland, Curtis has got in touch and says, for all those highly opinionated Northlanders, we don't want you using our Auckland airport. How pathetic does that sound, Curtis says. Come on, grow up. But another listener says, if I was up north, I'd be worried too. Unvaccinated people heading my way, despite having a negative test within the last 72 hours. We know that COVID's seeks out the unvaccinated. And this listener goes on to say, I'm in Christchurch and I'm worried, but I guess the unvaccinated cannot fly or use the ferries, so I guess I'm more protected than Northland. Sorry to break it to you, they actually can. They just have to have the same thing, a negative test 72 hours within travelling. So you're in the same position, actually. That's all we've got time for. The late news team will keep you updated throughout the night. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō. Tomorrow from 5 a.m, first up marks Auckland's 107th and hopefully last day of lockdown. And they're going to speak to hospitality businesses, and also the Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson will be on the programme. So do tune in for that one, 5 a.m. Get up early. Kia pai tōpō. Have a wonderful evening.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The government is deploying Defence Force and police personnel to the Solomon Islands in coming days. A leading epidemiologist says vaccinating 5 to 11-year-olds will give the community an important extra layer of protection. The chair of the Waitangi National Trust says cancelling Waitangi Day events at the treaty grounds now is a way of providing certainty. And lower socio-economic areas will be at the front of the